possibly keep track.
Well, we could now in our remarks.
But we have to reverse some of that, no matter what. I mean, it's going to deal with going.
Okay, it's 6 p.m. here on Tuesday, March the 13th. Time for our scheduled City Council meeting. We'll call it to order at this time and ask that we all rise. In the audience with us this evening is Pastor Rick Sutton, and I would ask him to lead us in an invocation, please.
Let's pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we are grateful for your compassionate love and mercy and the opportunity that we come before your throne with our cares. And God, just now we thank you for this community. We thank you for the way that you've blessed it. We thank you for its leaders and its this council, the mayor. We thank you for the first responders and the city workers of this great community. God, I pray that you would inspire all of us with wisdom, courage, and strength. God, as we lead this community forward, that all things might be to your glory and to your honor. God, we pray for protection, pray for strength, pray for guidance and direction in all things to please you. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Sutton. Clerk Hunziker, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Hughes. Here. Alderman Curry-Witzman. Here. Alderman Brown. Here. Alderman Voss.
Here.
Alderman McComb. Alderman Urbis.
Here.
Alderman Bratton. Alderman Bastian.
Here.
Alderman Campos.
Here.
And Alderman Pittman.
Here.
And your Stevens.
I'm here as well.
All right.
Thank you all for your attendance this evening. We have a number of items on our agenda this evening to get to. First off, one amendment to the agenda, which was pointed out to me by Alderman Urbis. It says consideration of council minutes from February the 24th. That should be the 27th. So that lines up with the minutes that we have provided. So with that being said, I'd entertain consideration of council minutes from February the 27th.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Up next, we have the consideration of accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll registers as included in your packet. I believe there was another list handed out right before the meeting. I did have one question that sort of bridges two separate pages. On page 1, we have the Anna quarries for some CA6 rock, and then on page 7, we have, I think it was Kincaid stone for the same rock, or it looks to be the same rock, and it just made me wonder, I guess, Darren, was this...
It was probably something that Bowers had hauled from us. I guess it depends upon which location they were in whenever they were bringing us. Normally we order a couple hundred ton at a time, so most of the time it's coming from Campbell Hill, where they're out of it. And they had the truck out in that area and pick it up and come back to it.
Okay, so it's just a matter of Bauer hauling it? Okay. Any other questions on the bills?
I just have one.
Ms.
This federal
Campos?
search that we have for Murphysboro abstract and these 3 different properties.
Remind me what page?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 5, list 657, please.
Okay. And what was the item you were, the Jackson County abstract and
The
title?
title for the 3 different properties.
Mr. Kennedy?
Title searches for demos.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hughes?
On page 7 of that same accounts payable list, and Darren probably can answer this, the key equipment for the street cleaner, is this the fairly new street cleaner?
The gutter room motor itself, the one that comes along the side of the gutter, the motor went out on it, and it was cheaper to replace it than it was to have it repaired.
Okay, and it's not under any kind of warranty at this point, correct? Okay. And then the next one down, which I think is police, that may be Chad, keeper systems for the key management, whatever. What is that, Chad?
Yeah, we're paying for that out of Fund 19. It's a key accountability system. It's a mechanical key management system for vehicle keys, building keys, and all that.
Okay.
Right now, we don't have any good accountability for keys. This is the
That's-
system I've
yeah,
used
I
in the past.
understand.
It works really well.
Thank you.
I had a question on the
Mr. Pittman?
same item. Is there a reason there's one on each register
Mm-hmm.
for the keeper system?
Well, I think Leslie had it to Galls the first time, and it has to go to Keeper, the other vendor, so she had to cancel one.
It's actually keeper on both ones,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's the same exact, no, it isn't the
It's a
same
different
amount.
yeah.
I don't know, I've only got the one list, 657, I haven't seen it.
658.
It's on 658 too, you want this?
And
Yeah, I don't have
It
6.
has the same
it does have the
credit.
same invoice number also,
That was a good point.
but it's a different amount.
Oh, she's got-
I'm not sure why it's listed twice, guys. I'll check on that. I'm not sure. I'll look at tape once.
I think it should just pay this.
All right, any other questions on the bills? All right, so I assume we want to approve the bills without approving the payment to Keeper Systems on list 658?
Pay the one on 657, is that what you're saying? Yeah, I mean, I think we should just pay one of
Pay the
them.
correct one.
What's that?
If we make it with that, with paying the correct one, only one of them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's smart.
I'll just not pay either one of them then.
The correct one.
All right, we have a motion and a second to pay the bills, withholding the two checks to Keeper Systems. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that takes us to our regular committee and commission reports. And up first, we have the Budget and Finance Committee chaired by Mr. W.J. Pittman. W.J.?
All right, under old business, we have the Senior Citizens Center repair contract. I mean, for you and Gary get together and
Alderman McCollum has been very ill the last couple of weeks, and that's why he isn't here this evening. And so I finally spoke to him this afternoon, and he said he'd been not gotten out of the house for the last 10 days or something. So he didn't really have anything to report, so therefore I don't have anything to
so we
report.
just want to move that one to the next meeting.
If we could.
Carry it over. We don't need a motion for that. do we?
No.
All right, that's the only item under old business. Under new business, we have consideration of monthly water bills. And I guess that's something that came up in our discussion last meeting.
Alderman Bratton brought that issue to the forefront at the last meeting because of the fact that we came out of a conversation about collections.
Right.
And I invited Catherine Valley, our water billing manager, to be here with us this evening to address whether they're the pros and cons of going to a once-a-month billing instead of the every other month that we have now. So, Catherine, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, absolutely. So we did a little bit of research in regards to the consideration, and we did find that it's going to, in order to make that happen, physically, personnel-wise, wouldn't be possible. We would most likely need to add on more personnel to do so, and it would definitely increase resource costs to do that as well. So that would definitely be some big cons to take into consideration.
And one of the things you mentioned to me, Catherine, when we were speaking earlier, is that our employee that actually reads the meters reads approximately 5,700 meters.
Yeah.
And so in order to,
Have to be every month.
yeah, in order to read all of those on a monthly basis, you would have to likely add an additional employee to make sure we got all the meters read. So it seems as if it is rather cost prohibitive. I would rather have monthly billing, frankly, but I don't know that especially now that we're working a little harder on collections, I don't know that the benefits outweigh the costs.
I agree.
Other thoughts from anybody?
Well,
I mean,
nothing
what
else is
of-
mail. you know, you're
Just
gonna
the
double
mail,
that. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, what will be the benefits?
Yeah.
We will be spending more in postage and insurance and everything that it carries with a new employee.
It's tough to see how that would positively affect on fewer people not paying if we're billing them monthly as opposed to 2 month, which is really what the impetus of the whole conversation was to improve upon collections. And it's hard to see how that would have any effect on it, I guess.
The only way that it would have any effect is that you'd be going after likely smaller individual amounts, because now if someone essentially says, well, I'm moving out of this rental and I'm just not going to pay the water bill, then it's allowed to rack up for 2 months instead of 1. But I still don't think that it's enough to
offset.
Right.
I agree.
All right.
That's the only item under new business. Is there any?
Thank you,
public-
Catherine.
Is there any public comment under budget and finance? No public comment. We'll move out of budget and finance.
All right, that takes us out of budget and finance. We'll go to building and grounds, and we, in the absence of Chairman McComb, I'll handle the items on this agenda. Under old business, we have a status update regarding the issue on North 23rd Street and Union Pacific. I'll look to our attorney, Mr. Blake. Richard, what do you have to report?
We have a draft of the complaint prepared to be filed against Union Pacific. We have some finalization to do it, and it will be ready to be signed by the mayor to proceed further with it.
Do you think that'll be ready within days?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things that we're looking at now is making sure that we name the proper corporate entity. You know, we know it's Union Railroad Company we're looking at. What we found is, or Union Pacific, what we found in looking at the assessor's records is that they show the landowner to be a Union Pacific Resources Company, which in checking the filings with the Illinois Secretary of State, even though they are an out-of-state corporation, they are doing business here and required to file to do business in the state of Illinois. We find that Union Pacific Resources Company is no longer an entity, or no longer the name of an entity that is out there. So we need to follow up that question and make sure we're naming the proper corporate entity as to that complaint.
Questions from the council, Mr. Voss?
When last we talked about this, they had asked the city attorney if there was a time that they could speak on the phone, and he said, certainly, we can speak now or we can speak whenever. And so has there been any further contact between them?
Not.
They were just wondering, I guess.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
All right, if there's nothing else to report on that, we will move on to the next items under new business. Senior citizens roof options to deal with new requirement. I have to say that I'm not familiar with the background on this item.
I did speak with Alderman Bratton in this regard. I don't know who else has information on it, but I can relay what he had told me. That Clover Roofing, who was awarded the contract, informed Mr. Bratton that there's a new federal requirements regarding insulation that will increase the cost of the job by approximately $10,000. So the question presented to me by Alderman Bratton was, well, can we move forward with Clover Roofing, or what needs to be done here? The two options that we had presented to Alderman Bratton would be, if the council is going to continue forward with Clover with the additional cost, it would require action by the council to, there's two options, either rebid the job with this new requirement, or if it's decided that, no, we just want to go with Clover and pay him with this additional requirement, we'd have to waive the requirement of competitive bidding by 2/3 vote of the council. And then, I don't have the exact numbers, Sandra may.
WJ?
I know some of the other bids were significantly higher. Do we know if that was considered in their bids, their insulation requirement?
My understanding from Alderman Bratton is they were not. They had included in the bid package, they would have bid on the same requirements. This is something new. This is, I anticipate. I am relaying information that Bratton gave
Well, do we want to take a vote to waive that requirement and move forward, or what does anybody on the council think about it?
I would say that review the situation because it's a considerable amount of money. $10,000.
And I guess my other question is, we don't have Joe Balsano here, but the roof is not in such a situation that this is a great emergency. It's something that needs to be done, but Mr. Pittman?
Originally, did this come up from insurance? I mean, is this an insurance claim?
Yes, it was. It was hail damage, I believe, if I remember correctly.
So can we also find out if that's something that the insulation part of it is something that the insurance will cover?
Perhaps, I guess that wasn't
If it's a new
posed. That's a very
regulation,
good point.
maybe they
I mean,
would.
say if it's required, then they should cover it, but I
Right.
don't know with the insurance.
So do we want to make a motion then to essentially contact the insurance company and then go from there?
I think it might be
Yes.
easier.
Okay.
I think that would give us, do we have any real confirmation that, beyond being told by the vendor that this is a new requirement, do we have any other confirmation that this is a new requirement? I mean, beyond that, I think the insurer would kind of confirm that as well, so that might be a positive about it.
Yeah.
All right, well, who wants to put that into a motion of some kind?
Do we,
Mr. Urbis?
go ahead, no. I was just gonna say, do we need a motion?
Well, do you
I
need a
would think we
motion
need a
to?
motion
Yeah.
Okay.
to rebid it.
Yeah.
Oh, to rebid,
Do we want to rebid it before we find out about the insurance? I don't.
No, I think we
won't.
need to refer it to the
I
insurance.
think we need to ask insurance before we go out for bid again.
Yeah, I agree.
And then potentially rebid it.
All right, well then, Ms. Ripley, could you please reach out to the insurance and see what they have to say about the matter?
And the understanding is that the roof will hold itself decently during the rainy season of the spring.
Oh, yeah, I think
Will be in
so.
good shape then?
Yeah,
Well, not in good shape, but
I've not been up there, as I recall, the senior center wasn't experiencing any, failure of the roof that they could notice from inside. This was a situation, I think, where the neighboring roof was being repaired, and it brought to their attention the situation that could be occurring with their roof, so.
yeah. Okay.
All right, so that is that.
Are we moving forward with the motion or just?
I think it seemed to be the sense of the council that we were just going to refer to insurance and then,
That's fine.
okay. All right, that takes us to renovation at Public Works, and I was thinking about this earlier. I thought, I don't think I'm in too much trouble, but I have had this brainstorm for some time about the fact that at our code department, essentially, not that we don't want to be open and transparent and accessible, but people were just walking right into the workspace of Leandra and Eric and Blaine, and sometimes those people are very upset because they've gotten a citation or a warning or whatever, a notice about code problems. And it just was a concern that I just felt like we had to address. And so the street department guys, led by Darren Mills, have done a few renovations there to create a entry space where someone, when they come in to see Eric or Blaine or Leandra, will be greeted by what is much like a waiting room window, essentially, and will have to speak to Leandra before they can just go straight in to see Eric or Blaine, and then can be invited back. One of the things that Eric has mentioned to me in the past has been that his ability to get the things he needs to get done during the day is sometimes hindered by whether it be a contractor or whomever just walking in, and it's difficult in his position to say necessarily, I just can't talk to you right now. I think this will just help provide a more secure and better workspace, and I'd encourage anybody to go by and take a look at it. I think it's only cost us about $600 to $800 to make the improvements.
Well, just to add some professionalism to the look of that office would be about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the decor is certainly not modern. Darren, do you want to speak to this any, or Eric, do you want to speak to this item at all?
I don't think you covered it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. That takes us to tree clearing on City Alley, and I am going to look to Eric Kennedy on this item. This dovetails into some work that Ameren is going to be doing on the 3-story former gas plant down by the river. And Eric, I'll let you speak to that.
Ameren and Commonwealth Edison are joint, going to clean up contaminated soil down there. ComEd is the lead on the project. We were hoping to get started into May, sometime in June. We got a letter from IDNR informing them that they can't cut any trees or push any trees down from April 1st through September because of some bird cat living down there somewhere. So they have to scramble to get whatever trees they're going to cut on the west side of the property is where they're going to start before April 1st. So, working with them, they've hired a local contractor to do the cutting down there, clean up. They have asked us if we would pay for it and then reimburse us because of the processing that they would have to go through Ameren, ComEd, and everything else. It wouldn't have made the time limit on doing this. They're paying for everything at the end of the day. So I thought maybe I'll put this on, let you guys know. It's under 20.
I'm gonna say, do you
Not
have
by
an
much.
amount?
Huh?
Under 20?
Yes.
Well, I think ultimately we want to work with them to try to let that get cleaned up in a guided manner if we can. And I don't think Commonwealth Edison is, checking their online banking to see if they've got enough money to pay us. So I don't have any issue with it.
They have good credit, then.
I'd hope so. I usually send, well, and Ameren, I know they get my money every month. So any questions? And I mean, in a sense, this is going to help us.
Actually, they're cleaning, it's in the alley, actually. There's a 20-foot alley on the west side of the fence where that substation is down there. And it's our property. And they're going
Right.
to clean our property.
So anyway, FYI on that item. All right, that takes us to public comment. Is there any public comment on items of building and grounds? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. That takes us to community relations, chaired by Mr. John Irvis. John?
Thank you. We have no old business. I have 3 items of new business. Consideration of street closure for the Southern Illinois Sports Resale, Saturday, April 7th. Anyone here?
We had information, you weren't here, John.
Okay.
We had information about that at our last meeting, and
Okay.
she did attend that meeting. It's just we couldn't vote on it because we didn't get a request in time.
Okay.
She's having it's her 1-year anniversary, just for your own information, and she's having some kid things go on with some bouncy things. She's only gonna only wants to close it from the KFC, the north end of KFC, exit and entry at the back, up to Walnut. So it's like less, and she owns all that on the opposite side. So it'll be about less than a block, really, almost.
There was only the one question about IDOT right away.
Yeah,
That's-
I don't think we can put anything on Walnut Street that says street closure because the way Darren talked,
So
because
it just has to be off the street. I'd make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? All right, that passes. Next, consideration request from class of 2018 for outdoor prom dinner, Saturday, April 28th. parking lot at 13th and South Street.
That's where the Apple Festival
Oh,
things
okay.
usually are. He's here to, tell John what you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Tell him
I don't have the paper that I talked about last time, but we just want to close it to have an outdoor prom dinner to get all the seniors to have like a last hoorah type thing.
It's kind of like the Apple Festival
Yeah.
fundraiser they have up there.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a great idea.
Is that a
Yeah, I
motion?
do too.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we close the
Second.
street.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? All right, thank you. Consideration request from Unique Shops of Murphysboro to use Smizer Plaza this Saturday for, there's a letter in our packet, scavenger hunt, or at least a starting point for a scavenger hunt. Anyone here to speak to that?
I don't think there is.
I'll make
Is there
a motion
to
we
approve?
allow it.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? All right, that passes. Thank you. Any public comment on community relations? Move on then.
Thank you, Mr. Urbis. That takes us to public improvement, chaired by Mr. Mike Bastian. Mike?
Okay, under old business, we have an update on the fence dispute on Division Street. It's my understanding that the 30-day letter was sent to the landowner, giving him 30 days to come into compliance with removing the fence, and that 30 days was up on Sunday. The ticket that was issued to them, they have not went to the hearing yet. It's April the 28th. It's my understanding at this time a lawsuit has not been prepared because the 30 days were just up on Sunday.
We don't have a complaint ready.
Correct. With that being said, unless you have anything else, I have nothing else to report on the fence dispute at this time, so. Any requests or questions from the alderman?
So are we proceeding with the lawsuit then?
Yes, it's in its works, but they haven't prepared it yet, is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct, okay. With that being said, there is no new business to report. I'm gonna open up for public comment if anybody has anything. Okay, if not, we'll close public improvement.
All right, thank you, Alderman Bastian. Takes us to Public Works, chaired by Alderman Dan Bratton. In his absence, I'll handle these items. Under old business, we have the discussion regarding the purchase of a new truck for the wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Stewart, I think when we last spoke about this item, we were going to, or you perhaps were going to do some investigation, if my memory serves me.
I ended up getting 4 bids, the 2 lowest bids. One was on the state bid deal, it was right around $30,000. The other bid, the lowest one was from Absher Arnold, on a Dodge 3500 that we would put our bid on. And the state bid truck is a total package. That's the lights, the safety lights and everything on it. So the bid from Absher is $25,000. And plus we would have to maybe invest another $1,500 at the most to swap the bed out and put the lights on.
So Absher is the most affordable option.
It is, if we want to use this bed, yes.
But, and you said that getting rid of the bed will, I mean, that's really the only thing of value. So if we're looking to get something out of selling the vehicle, it should have the bed in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, without the bed, I don't know, it may be worth $500, I don't know.
So kind of taking that into consideration, is it a push, or what's your
I think it's
recommendation?
pretty close either way. I mean, it's, again, I don't know what we can get out of that truck with the bed on it. I can't answer that.
Right.
But, you know, the bed's in great shape. It's worth a lot more than the truck is. We can use it. If the city's,
What's your gut feeling about it?
I'm okay either way. I mean, I like the
Didn't
idea.
answer my question. Jim.
I mean, I like the idea of the state bid truck, which you've got everything on it, you don't have to do anything to it. And, you know, but I do realize the bed's in good shape, great shape, and, you know, either one of these vehicles, whatever we do, it's gonna be 3 to 4 months before we get it, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Pittman?
Do we have anywhere else, any other city vehicles that the bed would work to be repurposed for, or?
There's only one other truck that can be used on, this is in that department. Make that swap if we went that route.
Okay.
All right, that's
And that might,
consideration.
yeah, that might be a consideration to buy a new truck and swap the red to the other vehicle, so we can get more, because we won't get the $5,000 or $6,000 that we spend on the bed, even if we put it on production. Being realistic, so we might be
But if we
able
could
to.
reuse that
If we can
bed, I
reuse
think
it,
it would
then
be
we can
smart.
still.
And then just,
Yeah.
you know, get rid of the rest of that truck perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, you may get nothing out of it, or it may just go to the dump somewhere, but at least the bed would be used that way.
And we did get rid of the old bed because it was just
Yeah.
absolutely
Oh,
fell
well, it
apart.
was, I was gonna say, it probably fell apart when we put this one on, didn't it?
Pretty well.
Uh-huh.
Or even maybe swapping the beds from, you know, and then sell the truck with the bed that is gonna be replaced.
I don't know. Oh, you're saying
Yeah.
put the bed off of Tim's truck back on it?
And
I don't
on
know
the
if that would
truck,
be worth
yeah,
the
that we
cost.
will keep, and then put in the other bed, even if it's with duct tape, you know?
Put Tim's bed on that truck with duct tape.
Yeah,
I think-
and then get the new truck.
It sounds like to me that we should buy the new truck and then let the
I do
Public
too. I
Works
think
Forum
so
and
too.
coordinate amongst themselves how that they want to do with the
Yeah.
truck beds.
Yeah.
I'll
I
make
would
that
make that
motion.
motion.
I'll second that motion.
What's this?
All right, we have a motion and a second to move forward with the purchase of the, I guess, state bid truck.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the, and one other thing, this is a 2019. The state bid come out with new trucks in 19, so the Dodge would be an 18. It's a 2019 Ford F-250.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to buy the new truck. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim. Up next, we have under new business, discussion regarding street maintenance instead of alley oil and chip maintenance. This was a conversation that we were trying to make a motion on at the last meeting, and so we've got it on the agenda now. And I think that Mr. Sheffer provided some estimates on what it would cost to do, I think, 3 different projects, one being Shoemaker Drive, the other being Hanson Street, and another being Fiddler Ridge. This is just simply a, do we want to forego the oil and chip alley maintenance this year in order to consider one of these projects essentially instead?
Absolutely.
And I think the sense has been that that is something we do want to do.
I mean, I'm all for it, and that's what I have been, I'm a little bit heartbroken that I don't see 15th Street in this group. But I mean, and we owe this to the Shoemaker Drive because of the soccer fields. They have attracted a lot of good, so we owe that to them. They have done a lot of improvement, and that's the least that we can do as a town. And the alleys, as far as I'm concerned, that they can skip a few holes. We do it in town, they can do it too.
And I spoke with Scott Evans about this earlier this week also. Scott, do you want to talk about the motor fuel and sort of what we have available and whatnot?
As I explained to the mayor, we have at the end of the year about $980,000 in the bank in motor fuel funds, and of which $450,000 approximately is already kind of earmarked for our share of 7th Street partly this year, partly in the next coming years. And also certainly some of the road to the sewer plant would be eligible for motor fuel money. So I said, well, what if we use $50,000 of motor fuel money as part of that project? That would leave about $480,000. And I said, well, you know, obviously we don't want to, I think, drain the tank and use all that, because you never know when you're going to have a big fix that can pop up unexpectedly. So I said, okay, well, if we left 180 in the bank and just earmarked, you know, $300,000, we could easily take care of Shoemaker Drive and Hanson Street with money left over. And so that was one idea we could go with. Since the other two ideas were considerably more costly, this would be, I think, two quick scores, if you want to call it that. So, just some food for thought.
All right, does anyone want to make a motion to move forward with street maintenance instead of alley oil and chip maintenance this coming year?
And do you want recommendation of which one of these we would like to go with, or does that need to be separate?
Mr. Blake, does a motion to perhaps consider moving forward with not only reallocation of motor fuel, but moving forward with one of these various projects, can it be made under this agenda item, in your opinion? I mean, there's not any stated specific project there, it's just a...
I would think we'd want to wait until the next agenda or next meeting, have it specified on the agenda what the project is.
But because of how it is worded in the agenda, I could make a motion that we forego the oil and chip program in the alleys and use that some of that motor fuel tax for
Sure.
street improvement. I'll
Mr.
make that
Voss.
motion.
And perhaps, I mean, we just have kind of the top three things here. Perhaps there's something of a less expensive, especially if we're going to set aside $300,000, there's a little bit left over. Perhaps a third project can be earmarked as well.
I think you really weren't recommending 300,000, were you? You were recommending 150.
All I simply said was that these two projects here would easily fit in there. Whether you use the excess is up to you.
WJ?
Could we move to reallocate a certain amount of motor fuel tax with Darren's discretion as to where that would be used?
I think we could probably move to reallocate a certain amount, but I guess I wouldn't be against that. I think Ms. Hughes has made a motion simply to put a marker down that we are going to essentially forego the alley maintenance this year. So if we're going to modify that, that'll probably...
If we're going to modify it, I'll withdraw it, but if we're not going to modify it...
Tell you what I'd be most comfortable with, honestly, is just approving this, even though it's mostly symbolic, and then coming back at the next meeting with those projects listed, and then considering those individually.
And I will second.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Hughes, a second by Mr. Pittman.
I did have a question.
Mr. Urbis.
Are we looking at all three or just the first two? I'm a little confused.
Well, I think we could put all three there, and then I think also in the meantime, perhaps I would encourage, aldermen to, if there's something else you want to suggest. We're here in the middle of March. We've got some time to identify some other projects if we want to try to figure out how those would work. Mr. Bastian.
We won't use that fly ash to repair those streets, will we, like 120?
That's what we were all hoping for.
I would think that better be put in the
Especially if we
meeting
could get it for half off.
What are we going to talk about then?
Yeah, right.
Had to bring it up.
So we're going to use oil and chip on those streets.
We're just going to mill them out and put down gravel.
Yeah, because if we're talking about maybe $300,000. If we're doing these two, we're talking about 161,571. So we still have a little bit less than half to do maybe 15th Street.
Maybe so.
I'm trying.
Actually,
And we've been to the historic preservation area recently.
Yeah, but we have a motion on the
Don't
floor.
look at me.
I just was putting the numbers together and
She's holding up for the award, isn't she?
I'm not quitting.
Gloria, I would tell you that I will reach out to Mr. Sheffer and see if we can't get estimate on that as well.
Thank you.
All right. I can't remember if we voted on that or
No,
not.
we
we did
haven't
not.
voted. The motion is on the floor.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do we have any public comment under items of a public works nature? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll come out of that and go to public safety, chaired by Alderman Russell Brown. Russell?
Okay, we've got on the old business consideration of request for books, video game.
I don't think that we can expect those representatives to be here until our next meeting. I somewhat expected they might be here tonight, but they are not. So I don't know that there's much to consider without their presence.
We'll just table it. Okay, next was concerned with no parking approved on North 10th and Locust.
Mr. Urbis?
I asked that that be put on the agenda. I was not here last time and not sure how I would have voted, but Paul and Craig reached out to me to ask that it be put back on. And so Paul's here tonight if you want to speak to
I
that.
have some concerns. Business owner here for 25 years. I don't know if any of you are aware, when there's courthouse cases going on, there's no parking on both sides of my street. Dr. Spears has public parking and parking on the other side of his, but I got a call from him last Friday stating that you were going to take, that parking had been removed in front of my salon. I have handicapped people, I have people in wheelchairs, I have people that struggle to get in every day, and I was coming to talk to several people about a handicap spot rather than that, because if we want to be fair and saying that's a blind spot, the spot on Locust and 11th Street has had, I've been there 25 years, I've never seen a wreck in front of my building. I realized that there was a wreck there recently, but Locust and 11th Street is much more dangerous than my spot. So now I have handicapped clients that are not able to cross the street, or parking is taking and it's affecting my business. I've got a petition from customers that were upset about it. I have several older clients that are on wheelchairs. I have some that are on walkers that struggle to get in. I have several clients that have signed asking why, and I wasn't notified to even be able to, the businesses there, which would be Murphy Construction, Dr. Spears, and myself cuts the class. We're not even notified that this was on the agenda, that we could come and state what we felt about it instead of being voted on. And the parking's gone now. It's almost 2 spots in front of my building. So the handicapped people are having to come across the street, which is very busy when the police or the fire department's going down that street. And when the courthouse session is in, there's no parking on either side of the street. Very frustrating.
I was not here at the last meeting, and I apologize, but I am going to support Paula in that. I think we need to reconsider what we're going to do. I really do, especially for the handicap parking and her clients.
There needs to be a handicap spot there rather than 2 spots taken away that, or if Murphy Construction comes in with one of their big trucks to remove whatever they have next door that they're doing business with, they take up all in front of my business. So they have, it's very frustrating. They have nowhere to park. I mean, there's not even one handicap spot on that street. And for them to have to walk from the other side of Dr. Spears, it's not going to happen. We're going to lose business. I've been here 25 years, and I would have liked that. I would have got the Murphy's here and Dr. Spears' office if I knew this was on the agenda last week.
Mr. Urbis?
Well, I also agree that, I support removing it. I think, as a general rule, I think it's probably a bad idea for us to, unless it's an emergency, to approve things like this without notice to residents and businesses, to give them that opportunity.
Further thoughts and discussion on the item?
I agree with Mike and John. You should do something. Remove that no parking.
Ms. Campos?
Should we actually switch the sign instead of putting no parking, handicap only?
That would be awesome, because it's been needed for 25 years. Like, I see people struggle to get it. Like, I have to move my car to different locations to let my car next to my building in bad weather, or it's inconvenient.
Well, I just would like to give some context, seeing that the 4 of you weren't here when it was discussed, and just some context into how it was presented to the board. And and why we may have reached the decision. I won't speak for my colleagues, but it was a very compelling story of obstructed view at that intersection that was backed up by the representative from the police department that confirmed that it was a hazardous scenario. So it was presented. To my understanding, that Dr. Spears was aware that this was on the agenda and something that was being discussed. He expressed his dissatisfaction via the woman that was explaining it to us, but he did not come to the council himself and explain it. So, and I'm not lobbying for one direction or another, but just to give you some context on why we arrived at the decision that we made. Was it was presented to us as a public safety issue, and so we took that under advisement of the police department and moved in that direction.
But to make it fair, we'd have to go to all the intersections of Murphysboro, and there's so many blind spots. That one over there by Cindy B's is so, I've seen so many wrecks there, so it's not, it's bad what happened, and I'm sorry but if you go there, there was no car parked that far out. That building is the blind spot, not the car. If you'll go through that intersection and look, the Murphy construction building that's 2 stories high, it blocks the view of that. We'd have to tear down the building to make it safe. It's not the cars that are blocking the view. You'd have to go to that intersection. See, I've been there 25 years. I pulled in and out of that intersection many a time.
Mr. Urbis?
Well, and if we made it a handicap parking, there would probably be less cars there than the way it is now, so, that might take care of some of the issue. I mean, I've parked there a lot, using the courthouse, and you do have to watch, because cars come down 10th Street, right down the middle of the road pretty fast, but, I know to watch, and, that's...
I have a question for Mr. Mills. When we talk about a handicap space there, if that's the direction we're going to go, I don't really have a good grasp for how those are laid out. It always seems like one handicap space really takes up 2 spaces. So I just mentioned that because I think that it could perhaps take up as much space or more than what's being taken up now.
If you look there now, they didn't start at the end of the curve because it's a rounded curve, so there's 2 of my spots that are gone now. The square that they made, there's 2 different markings there. Where the sign is back is 1 parking spot, but they went almost a half a car beyond that.
Okay. John?
Also, Darren, would there be sidewalk work that would have to be done if it was handicapped, or is it already accessible?
This was brought up before. I think somebody was issued a ticket on 10th Street. There was a handicap spot there. And I don't believe that you can legally put a handicap spot on a street like that because there's no egress to your vehicle. Like if you pull into a parking lot, you're gonna see a 6, 8, 10 foot wide area where the person can get in and out.
So it's ADA compliant.
Right, the sidewalks have to be also...
technically be legal on a street like that. Possibly a better question for Richard to answer.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Pittman?
I think we did try to get that spot in front of the Masonic for that matter, but we did.
Could you repeat that? I don't think everybody heard you.
I think we did vote to put a handicap spot in front of the Masonic. I don't know if that sidewalk situation is different than this one here. I'm not, I haven't been by there. I don't think, I would rather just see the parking available there, but that's not, that's not the vote that was already made, so.
Well, during the last meeting, didn't we leave it open to whether or not it would be 1 space or 2 spaces?
Mhm.
And if it was 2 spaces and we didn't need 2 spaces, we would make it 1 space?
Yeah.
I think that was a discussion during the last meeting.
It's supposed to be left to discretion of Darren, I think,
And we
and
went
the
over there when there
police.
was a vehicle parked there, and that's what made the guy
decision.
that painted the line on the street, that's what made his decision as to where it was going to go.
Mhm.
'Cause that was at the time was the issue, was not being able to see.
Yeah, there is space for one. I drove by before the meeting, and there's space for a vehicle to park there.
But effectively 2 spaces have been lost at there, is that correct?
If they did start at the end of the curve, it's a round curve. So if you look technically, if you're saying that's that building, the building blocks the view, not the cars. The cars can't go all the way to the end of that curve, they never have. If they start into my driveway, there's usually two that park there, but they started it way down, so it took up, there's barely room for one. It's now if someone backs outside of my building, they'll back into the car that's there.
All right, well, I think it looks like there's two options. I think one is that we research what can be done there with a handicap spot, table this item and bring that back for further discussion. Or two, we can reverse our decision from previous and make a motion to remove the no parking as it is, and then consider the handicap notion thereafter. But, you know,
Or do nothing.
or do nothing. And I suppose we can probably, I just would say this, be prepared that if we do reverse our decision, that there'll probably be a person here at our next meeting who was at our last meeting wanting to know why we all of a sudden decided that what we voted on wasn't such a good idea after all. But that's all right, is to change our mind if we decide we want to do so.
We did table this last time, and it's tabled.
I would say it was not unanimous last time.
No, and it was a split vote last
Mayor,
time.
if you would like, the Attorney General's Office has a Disability Rights Bureau, and I think they can tell us what can and cannot be done and what's required under ADA, and I would be glad to reach out, or somebody else can reach out to them.
Okay.
If you want to go that next step. But we do have that available.
The council request, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but they requested the numbers of traffic wrecks at that intersection. I pulled from 1/1 of 16, so essentially 2.25 years. Out of 636 total wrecks, there's been 5 in that area. So you're talking about 0.0078% of our wrecks have been there. So you average that out, it's 2 a year right there.
Which is about like any intersection probably.
Yeah, I mean, that would take a lot more work on my part to break out what the other intersection percentages are in the city, but it doesn't look anomalous to me, just looking at our rec reports.
All right, well.
At the same time, I haven't seen cars parked in that street particular from the corner itself, from Murphy Construction till whatever you, to your driveway, Paula. So, you know, solid, and that obviously does not help any driver. Because instead, not only having the building to block the view, you have also so we have to do something at least concerning the corner to allow a little bit more visibility to the drivers for safety. And research maybe the option of leaving a handicap space for the salon, that it will not inhibit her ability to keep doing business, especially with people who have special necessities. I was there, so I know what it means.
Mr. Voss.
What I'm not clear, and you make a point, is it was noted by the department that there is an obstruction there, but now is it a building obstruction, and it doesn't really matter if there's a vehicle there because you wouldn't see around anyway? What is the obstruction, and so I'm unclear on what's causing the obstruction, so I don't know.
I mean, if the council wants my recommendation, I think that we ought to, because the business owner is here and she seems to be inclined for a handicapped parking space. And so if we're going to sort of split the difference, we could maybe accommodate that and still provide for a little bit more visibility. So why don't we, for the time being, and I know it doesn't help you over the next 2 weeks, Paula, but why don't we figure that question out, and if that can be done, we can do that. If not, then we'll take a vote on whether or not we want to remove the no parking altogether.
Maybe if you put some lines there for elder people to pull up farther, because they can go all the way, like the first car can go all the way to my driveway. So if there was parking like they used to be down Walnut Street, where to put the front of your car, where to put the back of your car, I've had even them come up on the curb. What I'm saying is, they don't know where to stop, and they don't have good visibility, some elders don't. And they need, if they had a guideline on where to stop, they would go up farther, and It's not the view of the car that's obstructing people coming, it's the building.
Right.
The building is right out there. And if we wait long enough, the building's probably gonna fall down on top of my building, because of
You're probably right.
how it needs to be. You know how I feel about that, Mayor. It's ready to fall down. The windows are falling out. It's just, it's an eyesore. I wish we could clean up the whole block. You know, I make mine look great, and I still have eyesores on both sides. One falling down and the junk. Sad. Wish you could have the whole block and make city buildings so it looks beautiful over there, but right now it's not looking too beautiful.
You need to buy all them buildings and just fix them all up.
I need help.
Okay, so are we in agreement that we're going to, Mike, Alderman Bastian, can you help us there, you
I
said?
will make a call, and then if they need to talk to someone, you want me to go ahead and get them hooked up with Eric, or who? I mean, I can take the information, but if I could make sure they call and get the information ready, and
I think ultimately, Mr. Mills and his guys would be the ones that would be making the
that's fine.
physical change there.
I'll make a
so-
call, and I'll give them your contact information, because you know usually what's going on, and then I'll make that call tomorrow.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Craig, thank you so much for being here.
Would you like my list of important people?
Certainly, yeah.
And Larry Reinhardt, who's my customer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newton.
Okay, that is under public safety. Russell, we don't have any new business.
No. Need public comment.
Mr. Bastian?
Yeah, I don't know if it's under public or under this committee, but does anybody have any idea the status of when they are going to put stripes down 20th Street? I've had a lot of calls about it, or are they just gonna leave it the way it is?
I had asked Harold last time, he said weather, so.
The weather, okay, I didn't know, I hadn't heard, and I missed last week, so I didn't know. Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Okay.
No public comment. We'll come out of public safety.
Thank you very much. That takes us to the Personnel Committee, chaired by Ms. Barbara Hughes. Barb?
Yeah, there's no old business here. Under new business, I had Sandra put in the Illinois Public Risk Fund information in your packet. I attended a safety meeting that Sandra has quarterly with department heads and employees recently. And this is informational only. I think that, we don't always give our employees the pats on the back that they need and the credit that they deserve. If you will notice on this, our workman's compensation premiums have gone down from $345,000 in 2014 to 2018 to $176,000. I mean, we've cut that almost in half, and much of that is because Sandra's safety meetings and her developing the self-safety audit. The public risk, Illinois Public Risk Fund, in moving forward, really has some guidelines that they want all the municipalities to follow, and some of them we have under our belt, so we're really ahead of the game there. You should be, calling her and telling her what a good job she's done. And there is a new training network called Training Network Now that is free online training for groups or individuals that she's working at getting all of the supervisors up to par with, so they can keep their employees up to date on training for workman's compensation type claims. There's also going to start in about a month some YouTube videos for self-training, which I think is really cool. And they also want us to develop, and I'm not quite sure how you do this, but a slip, trip, and fall policy. How do you do a policy for a slip, trip? How do you write that? Except if it's mostly hazard recognition, perhaps. But that is something that if we get into these three things moving forward, we could, and not have a lot of claims, we could reduce that $176,000 even more over the next few years perhaps. So I'm just absolutely thrilled about the fact that we are cutting back on workman's compensation claims enough by educating these people that it's brought that down. Also, there was some discussion there, and you should all be thinking about these, about AEDs within the city. We have to.
Talk about defibrillators?
Yes. And I think that's something we really, really, really need to look at going forward for safety. And that's all the information I have about that. It's more food for thought than anything. You just need to know that somebody's doing a really good job of cutting down workman's compensation claims. And I appreciate it, and it's keeping our employees much safer. That's all I have under new business. And is there any public comment under personnel? Hearing none, Mayor, I think you can get out of that.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Ms. Hughes. That takes us to the mayor's report. I have kept this item about the Kerwood property on the agenda. We don't need to go into an executive session because I'm now waiting on Venus, but I think everything else is in line. So we are very, very close, and I'll continue to tell you that I may have to call a special meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks, but that action won't occur this evening. I do want to mention to you that a couple of things that came out of the last City Council meeting. We had discussed the Community Collaborative Commission, and I handed out to you before the meeting a list that I came up with off the top of my head. I think it's pretty all-encompassing of the various groups inside Murphysboro that would be good to be included in such a commission that would meet annually just for the betterment of the community. If there's anybody that you think I'm missing, feel free to let me know. If not, I'm prepared to move forward with the city attorney drafting this into some sort of ordinance.
What about Murphysboro Main Street?
You know, because they're so recently reinstituted, good.
And also maybe Jackson County Historical Society.
Very good.
Tourism?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about the extension group too, perhaps, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
U of I Extension.
Yeah.
Others?
Tourism?
I got it down here.
Okay.
I'm gapping on the name, but there is a group that comes to us for a donation annually. And
Jackson Growth Alliance?
Jackson Growth Alliance.
That's it.
That makes some folks' hair stand up on the back of their neck, but I thought I'd bring them up anyway.
Other suggestions? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to take this list with these very worthy additions to be drafted into an ordinance setting for approval at our next meeting. Ms. Campos.
Sorry, just one click into me. I was thinking of the name, but it's the Little Egyptian Development or that.
Greater Egyptian?
That
Greater Egypt.
one. It was Egyptian, then I got something, but they work with funds and stuff like that. It might be helpful to bring them
Okay.
over.
Very good. If you think of others, feel free to email me.
I was just gonna say, you know, we are invited to go to those meetings and nobody from the city attends.
Yeah.
I know that.
I used to go to them and they'd go, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
So I stopped.
Well, I've looked at the minutes and they don't seem to.
What about a representative from 17th Street about the barbecue cook-off, their committee that they,
Well, that's true
I
too.
mean, they bring a lot of business and
Yeah.
they work with us and all these other organizations. I mean, it's just a thought. I don't know if they would fit in, but.
It is actually the barbecue
It's
cook-off.
the state of
barbecue
Illinois. I mean,
cook-off.
it's a.
Well, I was trying to sort of keep it groups that receive some sort of government.
Oh, okay.
That's fine, government entities, that's.
Right.
Yeah.
And they,
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce, they might be.
Right.
Yeah, but for festival?
Okay, if you think of others, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll continue to work on that. Another item, although I don't have it, but it's informational, I want to let you know, at our last meeting, we discussed a crosswalk, a crossing guard at 21st and Walnut. I spoke with Keith Miley today, and he forwarded me some information regarding crosswalks and state highways. Essentially, what he believed would have to be the situation there is that you could station a crossing guard there. That crossing guard couldn't stop traffic, but they could essentially keep the pedestrians from crossing until such time as they deemed that the roadway was clear enough for them to cross. He said that there is the potential for the signage that is there, he said, certainly meets all of their requirements, so we're not doing less than we ought to be in that particular area, but that there could be a additional lighted signage placed there that would be activated by a pedestrian to help alert motorists that someone was about to cross, similar to what is in Ava near the Ava ball fields.
There's a lot of foot traffic there. Do we have the authority to paint on lines? I mean, is that us, or is that them? I mean, could we paint a brighter crosswalk there also, or?
They would, well, Darren, can you help me with that?
Typically, when you go across the state route, they use the thermoplastic, whereas we just use paint. So I don't believe what we would put on there would hold up very long.
But would we even be allowed to?
Yeah,
that's what I.
The long story short is that they seem to be very open to whatever we want to suggest and whatever we think ought to happen there, that they would be willing to work with us. But the one thing that they did say was that they wouldn't allow a crossing guard to be out in the middle of the street stopping traffic.
Can I ask
Mr.
a question?
Bastian.
And I think 127 is considered a state route, so why in
Yeah.
Peteneville do they allow that by there by the Catholic school?
Yeah.
I mean, they walk out. You know, they all do it, so what's the difference between their community and Murphysboro?
We asked.
I guess I don't.
Yeah.
I would like to
Yeah,
know
you're
that.
right.
Yeah, maybe all even have a light
Yeah.
and everything,
Can we
and
look-
they even put a police
Can we
patrol.
look into the cost of putting the sign, the lighted sign, and see
I'd like
the
to know that too, I agree.
availability of putting or having them put up brighter crosswalk there?
Yeah, I will ask him those questions about the costs and what they would expect out of the city, and I'll report back again at our next meeting with more information.
And why the other towns can do it.
Could we
and
check
the-
into that? Would you ask
We don't want to
him?
throw them under the
No, but you can call the.
Under the bus, I get it.
You can call the
Yeah.
Department of Transportation, you could call
Yeah.
the Springfield office and find out. I'm just curious as to why.
It's a legitimate question. We could just say during the course of conversation, people pointed out that there are other situations where this same situation is unfolding, and there's,
We don't
crosses
want
are
to
there,
get it
whatever.
taken away from him just because we're being
Right.
selfish, but
Just say that he's feisty and we're done. Don't
Yeah.
mention me.
You want me to blame Bastion, is that what you want to say?
Blame him, yeah.
Okay.
somebody something to talk about.
All right, well, I will reach back out with some of those questions, and I'll report back again at our next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
That takes us to council member requests. I'll start to my right with Ms. Hughes.
I don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Ms. Curry-Witzman.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Brown.
Nothing.
Mr. Voss.
A couple of things, like added to consideration for the funds for road resurfacing to include the rest of Logan Street. I had an inquiry to look into having the balance of Logan Street paved. Have not, it was.
Talk about going down the hill after you cross the tracks.
Right. So to look at that. And the same citizen also pointed out our friends at the railroad have kind of abandoned several signs, street signs that are in that area that were originally set up while they were doing construction work on the crossings there, but have just been kind of knocked over so that they no longer control traffic, but they're just kind of discarded there along the roadway, and they've had to kind of drag them off people's property and things. But in that area, at those two crossings right there at 22nd Street, in that area, there's several of the railroad signs that have just been left there after the construction was completed.
Okay.
Not sure what to do about that.
Well,
We'll give them back to them if. Okay.
Hold them hostage.
maybe I'll go retrieve them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're nice signs.
Yeah.
Been there about a
Very nice
year
signs.
now.
Yeah, right? You've seen those.
We had Sheridan Johnson called several times.
I gotta like decorate my basement. But the, I probably shouldn't have said that. Huh?
You probably
No.
should.
Kids should have not here, not on the mayor, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Voss?
No.
Mr. Urbis?
Yes, I would like to offer my congratulations to Chief Roberts on the recognition as the certified police
Oh,
chief.
yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
all your efforts for that, for you personally, but also I think that's a great benefit to the city.
Thank you, I appreciate it. There'll be someone from Springfield down here at the next council meeting with presentation. I had the same,
Good.
Appreciate it.
Good.
Anything further?
No.
Ms. Curry-Wichman?
I did have something, when Alderman Voss spoke about street repair. Watson Road, over by the general, almost make me get a blowout every morning. So please consider that road as well, almost pothole. So, that's all.
Okay. Mr. Bastian?
I would just like, maybe Sandra can answer that about the street light on the end of George Miller Street. Have they reached out to them, or do you know the status? Or? I'm sorry?
I don't know the status.
Okay. If you could just let me know, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Campos?
I think congratulations, Chief. I'm gonna miss it next time, but thank you very much.
Mr. Pittman? I also want to add something additionally. Of course, this coming Saturday is the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and all the aldermen are, of course, invited to walk. We're going to be meeting at, I believe it's the 7th Street intersection at about 10:30. I spoke with Alderman McComb. He said he's going to bring his truck, and he'll have a whole bunch of candy for us to throw out. And so if you would like to attend, we'd be happy to see you there.
10:30, man?
10:30.
Saturday.
Wear green. I'm sorry?
Wear green.
Wear green.
Yeah.
Just-
Okay, that takes us to department head request. We'll go to Attorney Blake. Ms. Ripley, how'd MBI signups go? Just good? Okay. Mr. Evans?
One thing, on the truck for the wastewater treatment plant, obviously we approved the purchase of the truck, but nobody said anything about if we're gonna finance that or if we're gonna pay for it in cash. What's the plan?
Pay for it in cash.
Okay. That's all I have.
Sounds good.
He'll sign the check.
You should hit the gavel after that emphatic, I think.
Chief Swafford?
Nothing.
Chief Roberts?
I wanted to point out the new council bench, the mayor asked us to remake the council bench. Brandon Young, one of our communications officers, volunteered to do that on his work hours. And really went above and beyond kind of what the idea was, so it's really good for, an extremely good cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of things. We got a $1,000 grant from Walmart that is earmarked for a new forensic computer for child porn, drug investigations, that kind of stuff. Ours is outdated. They're about $10,000 to $13,000, so that's a drop in the bucket. We've got that. The state has opened up a grant that hasn't been available in 3 years because of the budget crunch, and that is a grant for police car cameras and body cameras, which our department is completely deficient in. I'm presently writing the grant. It's 100% grant. It's probably about $90,000 in equipment that I'm asking for. The one thing it does not cover is the installation of the equipment. And I've estimated that installation to be no more than $5,000. But before I spend another 30 or 40 hours on this grant prepping it for the due date, Is that an outline number, or is this something that we want to go after? Hasn't been available in a long time, we have no target. We're losing prosecutions, we're losing cases.
On safety, if nothing else.
It's officer safety, it's officer liability, it's
Yeah,
city liability, it's
yeah,
a million different
exactly.
things.
Yeah.
But before I
I say
pour
go for
too
it.
much more time into it, I want to get the council's pleasure on all.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a commitment on the money now, I'm just saying, at some point, if I get the grant, I'm gonna have to come to you and say, I've got the equipment, I need to get it installed.
Go get him, chief.
Go for it.
All right, I'll find a grant for that.
Yeah, we will just support the installation.
Oh,
All right, anything further, Chief Roberts?
that's all, sir.
Okay. Darren Mills?
I do have something for Alderman Campos.
Thank you.
Seeing how we won't do anything to 16th Street for you. We started out there, tomorrow we're gonna fix 2 spots on the north end from your house, and then
Thank you.
we're gonna work our way down the street just to take care of the really rough spots.
Yeah, they've been, and now the traffic start coming back over there, so we can easily get sued because somebody broke a tire, I mean, so, thank you very much, really appreciate it.
All right, Brian Manwaring,
It speaks for you guys, okay?
Jim Stewart, Tim Lee, Eric Kennedy,
Nothing.
Catherine, Molly,
Nothing.
Leandra, Clerk Hunziker, anybody else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I can just guess anybody, can't I?